Hi everyone, I'm Rachel. In today's tutorial, I'll show you how to color a hyper-realistic ear using the Color Therapy app. Remember that your light source will vary, so you'll want to match it to your face. But the best thing to do is look at a reference photo to help with shading and highlights. Follow along by searching for this image under Ear in the search box. Okay, so to start off, start with the base foundation color, and I'm going to be using the third color from the right on the top row of the Skin Shades palette, and just tapping everything in. Okay, so now we're going to start off with our shadows first. So I'm going to be using the first color on the second row of the Skin Shades palette. And then under the airbrush tool, I'll do size 50 and opacity at 40. And let's make sure coloring inside the lines mode is set to off. So to begin adding shadows to the ear, let's just go ahead and basically start to just outline it all the way around it. And then within this template, there's actually already the shadow lines hinting at where you should add them. So you can start to add them in as well. So inside the ear, we're just doing really loose, broad strokes, and we'll refine those later on. If you did want to color in the jewelry, then you can turn coloring inside the lines mode to on. Okay, so now that we've sort of worked out the basic shape of the ear with our shadows, let's add in some really vague highlights. So I'm using the fourth color from the right on the top row, and we'll do the same thing, just continuing to define the shapes of the ear. So right now I'm just going around the inside of the ear, around the edge, and just adding in broad highlights. Now let's add in some more shadows. So I'm going to use a much darker color now. I'm using the second color from the right on the last row. And then with the airbrush tool, set the size at 25 and opacity at 65. And this time I'll have coloring inside the lines mode on. And so for some of the areas like the very inner ear, I'll start to add a shadow. And then also just tracing the inner ear that separates the area from the outer ear line. And you can turn coloring inside the lines mode back to off and continue adding in those dark shadows if needed. And at the very top inner part of the ear, just trace that line to make a shadow. You can turn coloring inside the lines mode off as needed if you're not coloring in the jewelry. And then follow all the way around the outside of the entire ear, just defining that shape. Then with the very darkest color from the Skin Shades palette, just add it into the very inner ear part, the very darkest part. You can have coloring inside the lines mode on again for that, as well as the middle inner ear here, and at the very top too, just a little bit. So we're just deepening our shadows. And I'll just add a little shadow right underneath the bottom of the ear too. Let's refine our details. So let's set the size now down to 10, and opacity can be at 60. Again, just go ahead and just outline the very outside of the ear. So just bringing it out from the shadow. Let's add further shadows. So select the third color from the right on the second row. Let's set the size at 15 and opacity at 70. So I'm going to continue just to add some shadows, just defining all the lines. I'm just following along those lines in the template. I'm adding a little bit of my own shadow at the top here, coming down. Okay, now let's switch over to the red palette. I'm using the sixth color on the top row. Let's set the size to 60 and opacity at 27. Okay, so let's focus some red areas into the ear. You can use coloring inside the lines mode on or off as needed. Let's just add in a little bit of a red just to some of the darker areas, as well as a few areas in the inner ear, just little touches here and there, just to add some life to it. Let's use the smear tool now and blend. I'll set the intensity at 70, and then you can use a variety of different sizes. I'm going to start with size 25, and just depending on how big an area is, I'm just going to start to blend it really softly. So just pushing and pulling those shadows and just blending. Raise the size as needed for larger areas and lower it for smaller areas. You can always check by going into the effects tab and removing the lines to see how it's looking. And back in the red palette, select the third color on the right on the second row. It's an orange color. And just around those same little red areas, just add in some more orange, turning coloring inside the lines mode to on or off as needed. Just a little touch here and there around the ears to make them look alive. You can also use the very first color on the red palette just to add some deeper shadows as needed. And then your final highlight will be the very last color on the red palette, and lower the size down to 20 and opacity at 30%, and just trace around the very middle of the ear, along the outside edge of the ear, as well as on the very inside parts too, just to add a little extra highlight. Now keep in mind, all of these colors will vary depending on your skin color, but you can still apply these basic steps to any skin tone. If you'd like to see more tutorials like this, Don't forget to subscribe to the Color Therapy YouTube channel so you don't miss any new tutorial videos. Thanks for watching our tutorial. You can get the Color Therapy app for free on the App Store.